Hey, what's up, everyone? Looks like I am live. Hope everybody is doing fantastic. Introduce yourself in the comments. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you comment. You share. Would love to interact with all of you for today's segment. Today is Wednesday, so it's my weekly 11 a.m. Eastern time zone here in North America. My weekly job search tips and strategies live stream. All right, so love to hear from all of you folks. Don't be shy. Introduce yourself in the comments. I'm just gonna check on a few things here. Let me know if the audio and video is clear. Because today is going to be a very exciting topic, and actually a topic that I'm always excited about. Because hey, anything recruiter or recruitment related, I'm always excited to talk about as someone who has worked in recruitment, right? So I'm not sure if the notification has gone out, so let me just check on that. And in the meantime, folks, feel free to introduce yourself in the comments. Yeah, it looks like we do have some people live. It might be a bit of a shy crowd here today, but hey, don't be shy, folks. And what I'm going to do, for those of you tuning in, I'm going to share a link later on that'll allow all of you folks to call in as a live caller with your questions. Happy to answer your questions. And if you have any questions you want me to go over related to today's topic, or anything job search related, feel free to drop that in the comments. I'm happy to answer and respond to any questions that you folks might have. So we got some comments coming in. We got Bishnu in the house. Bishnu, good to see you here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you're doing fantastic. Let us know where you're tuning in from, Bishnu. Like what's your city? What's your region? What's your background? Feel free to introduce yourself, folks. Like, what do you do? What's your profession? What's your field? What industry are you in? What city you're tuning in from? This is an opportunity for all of you to get more visibility for yourself, right? And network with each other, make friends with each other. If I can contribute to that, hey, then that means I did a good job on my live stream, all right? So for those of you tuning in for the first time, and by the way, shout out to everyone on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter /Periscope tuning in. Shout out to everyone and thanks for tuning in. My name is Dean Kulaweera if this is your first time tuning in. So my experience has primarily been based around IT recruitment. I've been working as a recruiter in the staffing industry for about 8+ years, working at small size agencies, also at large size agencies, and recruiting on a variety of roles in the IT industry. Technical roles, non-technical roles, dealing with decision makers and influencers and stakeholders of various sorts within these various clients I've recruited for. Ranging from HR personnel all the way to C-level executives and business owners. So everything I'm sharing with you folks is going to be based on my experiences as a recruiter on the front lines, as someone on the other side of the table, right? So every week I come here to share with you practical tips, advice, and knowledge that all of you folks can take away at the end of my session and actually apply to your job search. So we got Harjot in the house. Harjot, thanks so much for tuning in. Great to have you here and appreciate your introduction there. So keep the comments coming, folks. Now, today's topic, today's topic is a very important one. I'm going to be talking about, hey, how do you get and keep a recruiter's attention on the pre-screen call, right? The pre-screen call is that initial phone call you're going to get from recruiters, right? When they see your resume, or maybe they come across your LinkedIn profile, you do some chit chat, and they want to get on a phone call with you and take things a step further. That's what I'm talking about today, the pre-screen call, right? We got another comment here from Mahalakshmi. So Mahalakshmi says, "Hi Dean, this is Mahalakshmi from Canada. Can you provide some tips on how to impress a recruiter on LinkedIn for a job application?" All right, so that's a great question, Mahalakshmi, right? So I'm gonna get to your question shortly, but let me kick off today's topic right now. Before I get into the topic, just a quick heads up for any of you that have an interest in the AML, anti-money laundering industry. I have a special guest joining me tomorrow, right? So tomorrow I've got Sanjay Duggal. He's a risk and compliance consultant in the AML or anti-money laundering industry, and he's going to be joining me same time tomorrow morning, folks. So mark your calendar. So this is going to be tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. If you've been thinking about, hey, how do I get into the AML industry? How do I build a career in AML? What are the opportunities within AML? I'm going to get Sanjay to share some great insights and tips and information about this industry tomorrow. So again, mark your calendars. It's going to be same time tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. I'm going to be joined by Sanjay, and I'm going to have a great discussion with Sanjay about the AML industry. All right. So make sure you mark your calendars and hope to see you folks tomorrow who have an interest in the AML industry. All right. So let's see if we have any more comments here. I think yeah, we have. So Bishnu, I see your question. I'm going to get to your questions, folks, after I finish presenting today's topic. So keep the questions coming, keep the introductions coming. Take advantage of this opportunity to network with each other, right? So today's topic: how do you get a recruiter's attention? How do you keep a recruiter's attention when you get that initial pre-screen call, right? Now, don't underestimate, folks, the importance of this pre-screen phone call, right? Because the pre-screen might seem like something very, yeah, whatever. It's just a pre-screen and it's just with a recruiter. But guess what, folks? How you perform on this pre-screen and whether or not you really create an impression and grab the attention, get the attention and keep the attention of the recruiter will determine whether or not you move further along the process, right? So the pre-screen is that thing that's gonna, help determine or help the recruiter determine whether they want to move you further along the process. Maybe the remainder of the process is, hey, maybe the next phone call is going to be with the actual hiring manager. Maybe it's going to be with someone else on the team. Maybe it's going to be with a technical person, whatever it is. If you're not nailing your pre-screens, folks, with the recruiter, if you're not nailing this conversation, it's going to prevent you from moving further ahead in the process, right? So this is why this is such an important phone call. All right, now getting right into it. And by the way, you should definitely be taking notes because this is definitely, I know I say this like every week, right? I say it every week, but I got to repeat it every week. You definitely want to take notes, folks. I'm going to be sharing a lot of information and insights and even some word tracks on how you need to be handling these conversations, right? Now, to kind of set the stage, how does the pre-screening usually go, right? So what usually happens is, all of you send out your resume, or maybe, a recruiter comes across your LinkedIn profile. You do some messaging back and forth, or maybe they email you back and forth, or maybe they pick up the phone, and they give you a phone call right away, right? And then the recruiter is going to do what's called a pre-screening, all right? Now, how the pre-screening usually goes is if it's about a specific position, the recruiter might give you some initial information and details about the position up front, or they might not. They might go right into asking you, hey, so can you tell me about yourself, or can you run me through your resume? And they're going to want a breakdown of who you are, what you bring to the table, your skills, any experience you have, and all that stuff. And what usually happens, what most of you folks are experiencing is you go through all that, you take the time to run them through your resume, you tell them about your projects, your accomplishments, and all that stuff. And either they say they're going to get back and they don't get back at all, or they say, okay, yeah, can you send me an updated copy of your resume and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, and they never get back, right? A lot of cases, this is what most people experience. Let me know in the comments if this is what you've experienced, folks, right? Feel free to share your experiences in the comments. And keep the questions coming as well. So I'll answer any of your questions as well. But this is what usually happens, right? Now, why does this happen? Why is it that a recruiter would call you? They'll have you go through your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your experience. They'll ask you to run them through your projects, your experiences, your accomplishments, and all that stuff. And ultimately, it ends up with them not calling back, or they ask for your resume, your updated resume, and you never hear back from them again. Why is this happening? Well, first of all, I'm not agreeing with the recruiter doing that, right? So if you're a recruiter watching this, you should not be treating candidates in that way, all right? If someone took the time to have a conversation with you, and you're not going to get back to him, or you don't feel that they're a fit, folks, be transparent, folks, all right? If you're a recruiter watching this, be transparent. Like, let the candidate know, right? I mean, you just took up like 20, 30 minutes of someone's time. The least you can do is at least be upfront about them in regards to whether or not you want to move ahead with them or not, right? Or at least send them an email if you're too busy to pick up the phone and give them a phone call, all right? So if you're a recruiter, you should not be, ghosting candidates like that, right? That's no excuse. But that being said, folks, now from the recruiter's perspective, right now I'm speaking to the job seekers now, right? From the recruiter's perspective, what the recruiter's trying to do is they're trying to figure out, hey, I got this position I'm recruiting on. I need to find the people that I need to present for this role that are the ideal fit, right? So they come across this person or this individual or a whole bunch of people's resumes. They're like, okay, these seems like good fits, and then they pick up the phone call and they give a phone call, right? That's what's happening. Now, job seekers, right? I'm speaking to the job seekers right now. What is happening here, job seekers, is that you're exercising a minimal amount of control over the phone call, right? Because you're simply responding to what the recruiter is saying and what they're asking, right? The recruiter calls you, they say, hey, Dean, I came across your resume. Can you tell me about yourself? And then you folks, as job seekers, you immediately start responding and start talking about yourself, maybe running them through your resume and all that stuff. So the key problem here, folks, the reason why this is happening frequently to a lot of you job seekers is because you're not exercising as much control over the conversation as you should. All right. If you're taking notes, you want to write that down. I need to exercise more control over the pre-screening conversation with the recruiter. Write this down, folks, if you're taking notes. I need to exercise more control. Right. Now, how do you exercise that control? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to help you folks out with today, right? That's why I'm here. So first of all, before you even get into talking about yourself or running them through your resume or running them through your LinkedIn profile, always, folks, okay, this is like a rule. And if you're taking notes again, you want to write this down. Rule number one, a mandatory rule. Always confirm that the recruiter has your LinkedIn profile or your resume in front of them. Always confirm that, folks. Otherwise, you're going to just be talking about a whole bunch of stuff and they got nothing to look at. So you always got to confirm. So when they say, hey, can you run me through your background? Can you run me through your resume? Can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about that? Always say, yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter. Hey, I just wanted to confirm. Do you have my updated resume in front of you or do you have my LinkedIn profile in front of you? Always confirm that. You want them to have that visual component in front of them. So when you're running them through your experience, they have something to refer to. All right. Human beings, for the most part, are better able to understand things when they have something visual in front of them. All right. So you need to make sure, first and foremost, before you go into your pitch, before you start talking about yourself, job seekers, right? You need to confirm with the recruiter. Do you, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, just wanted to confirm, do you have my updated resume or my LinkedIn profile in front of me? Now, if they do not have either in front of them, folks, you either want to email them your resume right away while you have them on the phone, or you want to direct them to your LinkedIn profile, right? Now, this is how you're starting to exercise more control over the conversation, right? Because if you're going to be telling them about yourself, you need to be able to control their perception of you. And one of those steps is making sure they have your resume or your LinkedIn profile in front of them. So if they say, no, actually, Dean, I don't have your resume or your LinkedIn profile in front of me, you either say, folks, okay, great, no problem, Dean. While I have you on the phone, let me send you my resume right now. What's your email address, right? So you get the recruiter's email address, you send them the resume. Or if you don't have your resume with you, you can say, hey, no problem. Can you go to LinkedIn and I want you to pull up my profile before I start explaining so you can follow through what I'm going to be telling you about myself. And then direct them to your LinkedIn profile. Now, as a side note, this is why all of you folks watching, you need to make sure you have a customized LinkedIn URL on your profile, right? A lot of you have that scrambled, letters and numbers and a whole bunch of stuff. Very difficult to, share that URL, right? If you don't know it off the top of your head. So customize your LinkedIn profile, folks, and then send them that LinkedIn profile over the phone, or you can just tell them, hey, go to LinkedIn, search for me on the search bar, or you search them and send them a message or add them on LinkedIn. So they have your profile in front of them, right? So that's kind of the basis before we get into the conversation. Now, next thing is let's assume that they have your resume in front of them, they have your LinkedIn profile in front of them, and they're like, okay, great, I have that in front of me. So can you tell me about yourself, Dean, or can you run me through your resume? Now, a lot of you at this point, you're getting excited, right? You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell them about myself. I'm going to run them through my positions, and then what happens is you folks get right into running them through your resume. Or you start telling them about yourself from the start of your career, from the beginning of time, all the way up to the present moment, right? That's what a lot of you folks are doing. And that is incorrect. Why? Because folks, first and foremost, you need to find out what caught their attention about your resume or your LinkedIn profile. Why? Because that's what you want to focus on when you're running them through your resume and your profile. Why? Because if you watch my previous videos, my previous tips, and if you've been watching my stuff religiously, and I know some of you do, what do I always say? Recruiters are highly focused on skill sets, right? When a recruiter is searching for talent, that search is focused on skills and skill sets. And before you get into your pitch, before you get into explaining to them how great you are, how amazing you are, and all that stuff, you want to know what skills caught their attention, because those are the skills that they're probably looking for, and those are the skills that you folks need to make sure that you're focusing on when you're running them through your resume and your LinkedIn profile. So let's say the recruiter asks, let's say, a recruiter calls me and says, hey, Dean, so, can you tell me about yourself? I have your resume in front of me. I have your LinkedIn profile in front of me. Can you tell me about yourself, or can you run me through your resume or your profile? Then my response to that would be, hey, absolutely, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, happy to do that and appreciate your time, appreciate you calling me. Now, before I get into that, and to make sure I highlight the most relevant aspects of my background, If I may ask, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, what caught your attention about my resume, or what caught your attention about my LinkedIn profile? And then shut up, folks. You want to hear what they say, right? So then the recruiter might say, well, Dean, what caught my attention about your resume is X, Y, and Z, right? And then one more question you might want to ask is, okay, great. So what, why did that capture your attention, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter? Is that what your client is looking for, right? You want to ask that. And the recruiter might say, yeah, I mean, that's what they're looking for in an ideal candidate. Okay, great, excellent. Now I can go into responding to their question of who I am and running them through my resume. Do not do that until you have established this, folks. Otherwise, you folks are talking about a whole bunch of stuff. The recruiter is going to zone out, right? The only person paying any attention is going to be you. The recruiter is going to just, pretend like they're listening because they don't want to be impolite. And you're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff that might be great, that might be impressive for sure. Hey, I'm not saying it's not impressive or great, but it's not going to be relevant, right? And you're covering all this stuff the recruiters are not even paying attention to. I'll tell you what they are paying attention to, folks. They're paying attention to those key skills that their client is looking for, right? Whether it's a staffing agency or whether it's a corporate recruiter. They're going to be listening for skills and skill sets relevant to the position that they're recruiting on. So this is why you got to ask, first and foremost, folks, what caught your attention about my resume? What caught your attention about my LinkedIn profile? And why is that important to your client, or why is that important to the hiring team? Just those two simple questions you got to ask before you get into running them through your resume and your LinkedIn profile. All right. So keep this in mind. That's tip number one. Now, which brings me to tip number two, right? How you run them through your resume is heavily dependent on what you discovered from point number one, which is what are those key skills and skill sets they're looking for. So now when you're running through the resume, folks, you definitely want to mention, all those standout projects you've done, all those impressive achievements and stuff like that. But you want to put a special emphasis on those things the recruiter said that they're looking for in an ideal candidate, right? So the key skills they mentioned, that's what you want to focus on when you're running them through your resumes, right? So if you're talking about your current position at company ABC and you did projects X, Y, and Z, but the main skill they're looking for is the skills relevant to project Y, then you want to spend the majority of your time in that position when you're running them through that particular position. You want to focus on project Y. Right, you first want to focus on project Y, maybe mention project X and Z after you explain that, but the emphasis should always be on relevance, right? The relevant stuff the recruiter is looking on. That's what's going to get their attention. That's what's going to keep their attention, right? Those two components, getting attention, keeping attention, two different things, folks, two different tasks. So in order to get and keep a recruiter's attention, this is why I'm saying you first got to establish what caught their attention on your resume. And secondly, when you're running them through your resume, you want to focus on those aspects for each position or for each project that you're running them through. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you folks are going to talk about all your projects, all your stuff. The recruiters are not going to understand like half of that stuff, right? Because they're only listening for those key skills, and you're not going to be talking about that, right? Because you fell in love with the sound of your own voice, or you fell in love with your accomplishments, and you're talking about each and everything related to your position, right? Which is great. By the way, folks, hey, I'm not saying don't be proud of your achievements. You definitely want to be proud of your achievements, but let's be pragmatic, right? Let's be pragmatic. Let's get and keep the recruiter's attention so that they're like really leaning in. They're like, okay. So, this person's talking about relevant stuff here. I better pay attention. I better, consider moving this person further along the process, right? Now, myself personally, by the way, if you're a recruiter watching this, my advice is, hey, just let the candidate know up front what those key things you're looking for in an ideal candidate. That way, at least the candidate has the opportunity to know what exactly they want to highlight when they're talking to you about their experiences and their background and all that, right? Now, that's something I used to do as a recruiter, right? Like if I would call someone, for example, if I called Jonas here in the comments, right? If I called Jonas, I'd be like, hey, Jonas, your resume caught my attention. And the reason why it caught my attention, Jonas, was because of XYZ. So I just wanted to chat a bit more about you and, learn more about yourself and what you're currently doing and blah, 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 stuff like that, right? So then at least I know Jonas kind of gets the hint that, okay, XYZ are the things that Dean's looking for. And that's what Jonas should be emphasizing when he's talking about himself and his background and his experience. Now, despite doing this, folks, and I always used to do this as a recruiter, despite doing this, however, a lot of people, you'll be shocked how many people, despite me telling them the specific things I'm looking for, would still talk about a whole bunch of stuff that is like inconsequential and has no relevance to what I emphasized was important for the role. Right. So this is why I caution you folks. All right. Don't fall in love with the sound of your own voice. Like, don't start rambling on and on about a whole bunch of stuff just because you think it's exciting and interesting. Right. And it might very well be exciting and interesting, but if you're not hitting the relevant stuff, folks, this is where you're going to lose the recruiter. They're going to zone out. They're not going to see how you're a good fit for the role, and they're not going to make any attempts to give you a shot at explaining that, or further narrowing it down whether or not you indeed are the right fit for the role. So remember this, folks. Very important to focus on the relevant stuff, right? Now, after you go through explaining who you are and then running them through your resume, at this point, the recruiter might say, okay, great. Well, send me a resume, or let me get back to you, and that's it. And they kind of disappear. And then you folks get disappointed at that, right? Like you spend the time running them through your resume. You talked about the relevant stuff. What next? Again, this comes to the next part is another aspect of exercising more control, which you job seekers need to exercise, right? So after you run them through your resume, always, and if you're taking notes, you want to write this point down for sure. After running the recruiter through your resume or through your projects, or after explaining about yourself, always ask the recruiter, hey, having discussed having talked more about what I bring to the table, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, and what skills I have, and the relevant skills I have, how well do you feel I fit into what your client or your hiring team is looking for in an ideal candidate? Always ask this question, folks. You want to get a commitment from the recruiter right now that they do or do not see you as an ideal fit. You want to be very upfront about that, right? So this is, again, another aspect to exercising more control over the phone call. So again, after you run them through the resume, after you talk about the relevant stuff and all that stuff, do not get excited and start thumping your chest and thinking, oh yeah, I got it, I did it, I nailed it, blah, blah, blah. No, the game's not over yet, folks. At this point, you then want to ask the recruiter, hey, Mr. Mrs. Recruiter, having run you through, the relevant experience that I have and that I bring to the table, how well do you feel personally that I fit into what your hiring team or what your client is looking for in an ideal candidate? Put them on the spot, folks, right? A lot of you are not asking these tough questions. Put the recruiter on the spot, right? So then the recruiter is going to either say, yeah, absolutely, Dean. I mean, I definitely feel like, based on, what you told me, I feel like you're a good fit. I definitely would like to present you to my client, right? Now, if the recruiter says that, don't just leave it at that either. Always ask why. Then say, hey, great, I appreciate that, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter. And out of curiosity, why do you personally feel I'd be a good fit for this role? Like, what caught your attention about what I told you about my background experience? Again, put them on the spot, folks, and get that confirmation from the recruiter. Then the recruiter has to let you know exactly why they feel that way. And this is so that they're not just BSing. They're not just being polite and professional, and they don't want to reject you or something like that. So by asking this, you get that confirmation, and you're able to verify whether or not indeed they are, or at least if the chances are high that they're going to move you along the process, right? So then the recruiter might say, oh, well, what caught my attention about, what you told me, Dean? Well, I really like what you mentioned about Project Y, especially about, such and such aspects of that project. And, that's why I feel that, the hiring team is going to really like you, because their project right now is very similar, and they want to make sure that they have someone who has similar experience that they can present for this, that they can interview for this position. Right. So this is what you need to be doing, folks. And this is also another great transition for you to chat more about the project. Right. So if the recruiter mentions the project, if it's a corporate recruiter, they might have more details about the actual project itself. So this is where you can gather more information about the project. Right. So this is where you can veer into, oh, okay, interesting. So what exactly is going on the project right now, and what's happening right now? Why is the hiring team looking for someone else to join the team at this time? Blah blah, whatever. So this is another opportunity for you to transition into talking more about the project. And then finally, after that, folks, comes the confirming the salary and rates and all that stuff. So this is where you should ask the recruiter, hey, based on Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, based on your understanding of my background, what I bring to the table, and what your hiring team is looking for, or what your recruiter is looking for, then based on that, what kind of a salary or rate would your client or would your hiring team be willing to offer someone such as myself with my skills and my ability? Right. And then this is where you get into the salary conversation, the salary discussion. So if they come back with something too low, hey, this might be a chance, be the time for you to see if you can push for something higher. Right. So this is where you get into maybe the negotiations, at least at this point. Now, the final tip is, if it's a specialized recruiter, right, whether it's a corporate recruiter or whether it's a staffing agency recruiter, if it's a specialized recruiter, for example, when I say specialized, that means if it's someone who has the title of IT recruiter or corporate IT recruiter, like someone who specializes in your field. This is where you got to make sure, folks, that you are you're analyzing or determining if this is a long-term relationship you can have with the recruiter. So at this point, you should be asking the recruiter before you end the phone call. You should be asking them, "Hey, Mr. Recruiter, by the way, how frequently do you recruit for my skills and for my skill set?" Right? You want to find that out, and you want to find out how frequently they recruit for your skills in the past, right? Previously, and also whether they anticipate recruiting for your skills and for your skill set in the near future. And if yes, you want to make sure you maintain communication with this recruiter, right? So just say, "Hey, okay, excellent, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter. Appreciate you presenting me for the role. And you know what? Given the fact that you recruit frequently for my field and for my skill set, I think it would be great for us to keep in touch. Can I add you on LinkedIn so we can keep in touch and stay in communication? Because even if you feel like I'm not the right fit for this position, and even if your hiring team feels that way, I definitely love for us to keep in touch." Because I guarantee that I might be, I could definitely be someone of value to maybe some other potential opportunities that might come up in the future with your hiring team or with your clients, right? So determine that, folks. Ask the recruiter how frequently they recruit on your skills and your skill set before you end the phone call, so you can determine whether it makes sense for you and them to keep in touch. All right. So those are the tips for today, folks. This is how to exercise more control over the phone call. And you want to make sure that you have that discussion, very transparent, and that you confirm these things so that you can move yourself along in the process, right? So take these steps, and again, these are steps based on my experience as a recruiter, and you want to make sure you confirm these things and ask these tough questions so you increase your chances of moving yourself along in the process. All right. So I see some questions here in the comments. I have not been ignoring the questions. If you want to ask me your question live, I'm going to share a link right now, and you can tune in live. You just got to make sure you have a mic. If you don't want to be on camera, you can definitely turn off your camera. But I'll share that link in the comments. So those of you folks who want to ask me a question live, you can tune in live and ask me your question as a live caller. Right. So give me a couple of seconds. I'll type that into the comments. All right, so I shared a link in the comments. So feel free, those of you who want to join in as a live caller and ask me your question, feel free to use that link I put in the comments and feel free to ask your question. All right, I'm here to answer any of your questions regarding today's topic, or even in regards to anything job search related. So I shared that in the comments. Feel free to use that link. All right, so let me go through the questions now. All right. So we got a question here from Mahalakshmi. So Mahalakshmi said, "Hi, Dean. This is Mahalakshmi from Canada. Can you provide some tips on how to impress a recruiter on LinkedIn for a job application?" All right. So Mahalakshmi, this depends on. Okay. So let me understand the question. How to impress a recruiter in LinkedIn for a job application? Yeah. So firstly, Mahalakshmi, you got to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is detailed, right? You got to make sure it's detailed and it's focused on the type of skills and the type of positions that you're looking for, right? A lot of people, what they do is they make the mistake of listing too many things, too many of their abilities on LinkedIn, and it just comes across as too scattered. So you want to make sure, Mahalakshmi, that your profile is very, very focused and very targeted to a specific role or specific position, so the recruiter sees that. Now, the next thing is you want to make sure you put as much detail into your LinkedIn profile as you would in your resume, because recruiters are going to be searching for you based on keyword searches, right? Recruiter is going to enter a keyword search. That's how they're going to find your profile. If your profile is not keyword rich, it does not contain those keywords related with your skills and your skill set, they're not going to be able to find your LinkedIn profile. So you got to make sure, Mahalakshmi, that it's detailed, it's focused, and it contains the kind of skills required for the positions that they're recruiting on. All right. So great question there, and thanks for asking that, Mahalakshmi. I think we got a live caller here. So hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Awesome, fantastic. Thanks so much for tuning in, Nick. Have you been following me for a while?
I followed you for a while. I think I messaged you a while back. Yeah, I like what you're doing. I really do. I think it's really cool. I think that you're helping people with your broadcasts and stuff like that.
Appreciate that, Nick. Yeah, I think I do remember you. You post a lot of great stuff on software development, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I got my camera out. I didn't shave today because work from home, right? So.
No worries.
Actually, I can start my camera there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, good to meet you in person.
rugged developer. This is anyone who wants to know what a developer's lifestyle is. This is it. It's like
There you
sitting in
go,
your front
folks. There
room.
you go, right here. This guy right here. Yeah. So Nick, thanks so much for tuning in. But yeah, what's your question, Nick, or what's your comment?
You mentioned salary.
Yeah.
And so this has been kind of like a pain point for me, right? So I'm
Right.
about 48 years old, and I've been working in software since I was like really young, right? Like I don't
Right.
know when like the first time I got paid to do it, maybe I was like 18 or something, right? So
Nice.
I'm a lifer, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, I think a lot of people, getting into this field don't understand salary, how it works at all.
Hmm.
You know, and when you made the comment, to ask the recruiter about the salary range and stuff like that, it's a big mistake from my point of view, right?
Right.
If you're looking for a job, like I think if you're interviewing and doing that, especially in today's economy, especially with people, I hear a lot of people struggling. Um, they're very short-sighted, right? So you might say and do things to get yourself into the door, get an
Hmm.
interview, get an offer, and then you wake up Monday morning and you have a job. You're gonna regret it 3 or 4 months down the road, right? Because no one gives you a raise in this field, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you get in that door and they don't know you, that's like the best time to negotiate your salary. Because after they know you, it's kind of really hard to get them excited again, because a lot of the offering of the salary is based kind of like on well, it's situational, but it's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
emotional. It's like, oh, I really like this candidate. I really want to get him in the door. Let's offer him what we can. So in regards to recruiters, okay, so recruiters, I know that you said that you were a recruiter, but recruiters are super self-serving, right? So you picture this: you have a recruiter. His job is to get a resume, send that to an employer. I'm talking about external recruiters, not for hire on site.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
gets a resume, he sends it to a customer. He doesn't get paid unless that person gets hired for whatever the terms are, right? Usually it's a percentage of the salary,
Yeah. That's
right?
right.
Or it's a fixed some deal, right, that he has. A good recruiter will have a pre-existing deal, and a bad recruiter won't. And that often what they look for is a resume to get them through the door, right? So these are what I call blackout recruiters. That's where it's like, I'm going to send them my resume, but I'm going to write black marker over everything that identifies who this person is. And then I
Okay.
send that,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
right? And that you kind of
Yeah.
fishing.
Yeah.
So why is this bad for salary? Well, because for the recruiter, he's happy to earn a certain commission. He's not trying to earn, like, he's like, oh, I have a small startup maybe in this town. I can make 5 grand. I can make 10 grand off them. Maybe. That's what he's going for, right? And if
Yeah.
if he was like, I'm going to try to milk them for 15 by getting someone really good in there, then he has to live with failure, right? He's got to
Right.
have like a lot of companies that he could try to get 15 from, which is really hard. So it's a
Right.
lot
Right.
better if I have like 3 where I could get like 5 or 10.
Right. So
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 when
Nick, so Nick, you brought up a great point, and I definitely wanted to touch on that, right? Because this
Yeah,
is something that is happening, folks, and this is something very important. And I'm really really happy that you brought this up, Nick, because there are situations, folks, where recruiters do not have an established relationship with a hiring team, right? They're gonna try to get just throw resumes, whatever's gonna hit, whatever's gonna get that conversation going with the hiring team, right? So this is something very real happening out there that Nick's talking about. So this is why, folks, in your conversations with recruiters, this is why a lot of you folks, you're getting excited just because you got a phone call with a recruiter and you're going right
yeah,
into talking about yourself. You're spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So this is where, folks, you got to ask those qualifying questions, which I covered early on in the segment, right? Ask more questions like, how long have you been working with this client? Why are they looking to hire for someone right now, right? And how long have you been recruiting on this position? Yeah, so you folks have to be asking these questions. And also, aside from that, what caught your attention about my resume? What did you like about my resume? Why did you feel that I'm the right candidate for this position? If there's a lot of hums and ha's and like they don't know how to answer those questions, chances are, folks, it might be a situation that Nick's talking about, right? Where they don't have an established relationship. So yeah, great point there, Nick, right? I mean, don't get excited right away, folks. You as a candidate have every right to ask your own questions to qualify the opportunity yourself. right? And definitely recruiters in the staffing agency side of the equation, definitely commission based. They do. I mean, that's their incentive, right? To present candidates and get that commission. That's how they get paid. That's how they do their thing and all that stuff. So you got to make sure that you're asking your own questions as well. Now you mentioned something as well about salary, Nick. So in regards to the
Yeah.
salary, I definitely get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, if you're talking to a staffing agency and you don't get that salary part of the conversation done with, in most cases the agency will not proceed any further.
I'm going to
Right?
tell everyone watching right now, you have to be strong and be willing to walk away than undermine your own negotiation position, right? You never sit down at a game of poker and then tell everyone at the table what your limit on the pot is, right? And I mean, and you're right. There are a lot of recruiters who will not represent you unless you commit to a number. You shouldn't work with them. I have no problem. Like I have lots
Well,
of
well,
years.
well,
I can pull out a
yeah.
resume. I can give it to someone, and what I'll tell people is, you tell the recruiter, I promise you, I'll make it worthwhile. Right? You can buy a car if you get me a job. Like you can motivate them.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. So,
Right?
so, so Nick, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, Nick. But working in the agency side, like I can tell you, folks, majority of agencies will not present your resume if you don't confirm your at least your range or the salary you're going for. So I do appreciate where you're coming from, Nick. I appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing that stance.
There's a
But
reason for this,
yeah,
and the reason is that the recruiter, the HR person, the hiring manager, and the tech lead who's going to interview, none of those people I mentioned set the budget for the salary.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
Right? Nine out of 10 times when you go into a recruiter and you get into a room and you whiteboard and you do stuff like that, the guy that set the salary budget for that project isn't in the room.
yeah,
And those people are going to go to that person and they're going to say, I have this guy, he's really good, I want him, but you know what? There's a fee on hiring him. Right? We got to pay the recruiter. That comes, I'm sorry, but that comes out of your salary. So there's so you can have, we'll take a legitimate thing. I worked at TD Bank a couple of years ago. They had to put together a team of 25 people. I can't tell you, to turn around and hire 25 Angular developers in 1 month is
yeah,
wishful thinking.
yeah, yeah,
And they threw a budget at it, and I can't remember what it was. It might have been $1 million or $2 million salary budget or whatever. And when I sat down to have that discussion, they wrote a figure of what they're willing to pay to the recruiting fee. It was like 200 grand.
Wow.
And every time they hired someone, it took out of that pool of funds. It has nothing to so there's a lot of, what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of pre-existing budgetary
right?
things.
Yeah.
When you're talking to the recruiter and he's kind of echoing this range that is kind of like, well, we know we're talking to a recruiter. We're managing our recruitment fund, right?
Yeah.
And this is the range that we would talk with you. What they would talk, what salary you could get in person if you didn't go through a recruiter, that if you knew a guy and you networked and you got in for an interview, you can get a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, this is the thing. When you're negotiating with the recruiter, you're negotiating with the wrong person. That's the point of what I'm saying. And for a lot of people, they shop by the range, which I don't understand. Like if I wanted to make 100 grand, they look for ads that are advertised as 100 by a recruiter.
Yeah.
Right. So you should never, I mean, I guess this is like a different topic, like the whole salary thing, like how do you determine it and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure, Nick, for sure.
Sorry.
I really appreciate you sharing that because I definitely agree with what you're saying, right? I mean, the ideal situation is you should be negotiating with the person, involved in the hiring decision and making the actual decision itself.
Yeah.
So absolutely, right? Totally agree with you on that.
What I would do is if you're in a situation where you want to get into the interview, maybe you like the company or whatever, you call it presentation. So you say to the recruiter, you can present my resume at this salary range.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. But once I get through that door, I'm going to tell them that number was to get me the interview.
Yeah.
Right. And you should do that. Like, first, thank you for meeting me. It was really nice. Interview was arranged by Dean. I told him 120. He got me the interview. I want to tell you my expectations are that I want something better,
Yeah,
right?
got it.
So because often when I do that in an interview, the response I get from the person on the other side is always, oh, the recruiters are so expensive. Right. So the budget of the salary had nothing to do with the role or me personally. It had to do with their relationship with the recruiter. I've gone into places and done that and then turn around and said, well, we can't hire if we go higher, it's just they want 30% of your salary.
Yeah.
Right. And at that point, it's your choice, right? Like what to do, but you shouldn't talk money at all, during the interviewing process. In the ideal situation, you play poker face and force them to make a first offer. They hate it. The employer really hates it, right? Like they don't want to do that. A professional will respect you and say, okay, what I like to tell people when I'm interviewing, when they ask me, what's your salary expectations? I say above average.
Okay, got it.
Right, because when you go online and you look for what is the salary for this role, it's the average rate. So half the people doing that work make less than you, and the other half are making more. So I mean, I don't believe anyone is really average.
Yeah, right? Totally. Hey, Nick. So sorry, I got to cut you off, Nick. I got another call on the line.
Sure. Okay. Good. I like your channel. I like watching.
Yeah. Thanks. Hey. When can I have you as a guest on my Tech Talks? I love to have you as a guest to talk about software development stuff.
We should do that. Yeah.
Let's do that. All right. So I'll send you a message.
It's a lot of fun.
We'll set that up. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in, Nick. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. Bye. All right, and we have Christina. I think it's Christina. How's it going, Christina? How are you?
I've got some feedback, so I'm just going to talk through it. My question to you today is, besides not being direct about the skills or their abilities and what they have to offer, what is one of the biggest mistakes that job seekers are making when they approach a recruiter or if they're interviewing?
Yes, so I think there's some background noise there, Christina. I don't know if you can kind of mute that or not. But in terms of the biggest mistake that I've seen candidates make is probably not being prepared to speak about themselves. A lot of people, I think one of the major mistakes so many job seekers make is they have their resume, they have a great resume, and they're putting all their dependency and their hopes on their resume communicating their value. And that's one of the greatest misconceptions I think a lot of people have is, hey, I got a great resume. The resume is going to, take care of everything. But no, as a job seeker, as a candidate, you have to make sure that you're the person doing the selling. The greatest resume in the world. I mean, if you invest thousands of dollars into a professional resume writer, you get a great resume. The only thing it's going to get you, folks, is a phone call, an initial phone call. That's all. The only thing a resume is going to get you. It's going to get you a phone call, but getting the job is up to you and up to your ability on how you communicate yourself, how you communicate your value to recruiters, and not just recruiters, of course, but the hiring team as well. So I would say that that's probably one of the major mistakes I've seen, Christina, is too much dependence on the resume and not being prepared to communicate their value. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Thanks so much for calling in, Christina. Great to have you here and have a wonderful day. All right. Awesome. So I shared a link in the comments, folks, if you want to tune in as a live callable. I'm going to go through the questions in the comments as well. So we got a question here from Bishnu. So Bishnu says, I work for Barclays in investment banking domain and planning to move to Canada. If you can give some insight to get a job in Canada, just trying to collect the information before landing, like any website to go through, how to make a powerful profile to impress the interviewer. I'm based out of India in Pune. Okay. So Bishnu, well, first of all, congratulations on making the move to Canada. I mean, Canada, I'm not sure which city you're planning to move to, Bishnu, but Canada is always looking for great talent, right? Now, the thing is, in terms of if you plan on trying to get a job while you're still overseas, to be very frank with you, Bishnu, this might prove a challenge right now, especially right now. I mean, even before COVID, that was highly unlikely, especially right now, because there's so much local talent available locally that are unemployed, that have been laid off, that have been affected by COVID-19, who are on the market and available to work. it might be much more difficult for you to, or it might be much more difficult for a hiring team or for an organization to justify looking for talent outside of the city even, or even outside of the country, right? So my advice to you, Bishnu, is look, I'm not trying to discourage you. Keep applying if you want to keep applying, keep, connecting with people, but focus on definitely building your network of contacts before you arrive, right? So put some work into networking, start connecting with people locally in your industry, in the domain you're looking to get into, which looks like investment banking, and start having conversations, start building that network, so that by the time you arrive here, you have a strong base of contacts that you can reach out to, and for potential referrals or opportunities that might be available locally. All right. So hope that helps, Bishnu. Great question, and all the best in your move. Definitely keep in touch. We got Aditi here. Thanks for tuning in, Aditi. Good to have you here. Jonas says this is exactly what is happening. So I guess, Jonas, you were talking about when what I was talking about, the conversations with recruiters. So yeah, it happens a lot, folks, right? Karan says this happened with me last week. Yeah, totally, Karan. So Jonas, Karan, hope this session was helpful in how to deal with these conversations, right? Tarun says, hi, DK. Tarun, hey, good to have you here, Tarun. Thanks so much for tuning in. So Mahalakshmi says, but asking a recruiter whether he or she has my resume or not is it not like questioning the recruiter? They may not like questioning them. Yeah, so Mahalakshmi, if you're asking it in a way that's professional and polite, I don't see why anyone would be offended. Like if a recruiter is offended by you asking them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, just wanted to make sure you have my resume in front of you, or if you have my LinkedIn profile in front of you, and whether you have the most up-to-date version of my resume. If a recruiter takes offense to that, then something's wrong with the recruiter. Like, I don't know, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they shouldn't be in recruitment at all, right? You're in the people business, folks. You can't treat people like that just because they want to confirm whether they have your resume, their resume in front of you or not, right? So Mahalakshmi, as long as you're being professional, you're being polite, you're not asking it in an impolite way or demanding way or anything like that, should be no issue. I don't see any reason why a recruiter would be offended at you asking them that, right? So hope that answers your question, Mahalakshmi. Good, great comment there. Harjot says, could you please tell me about the exact format of the resume? Harjot, I mean, there's plenty of resources on Google and stuff on how to format your resume. So take a look at that, right? I'm not sure what your location is. I don't know if you're in Canada or Toronto or whereabouts, but the North American format is pretty standard. So I'm sure you can do a Google search and figure that out. Nick says, yeah. So Nick, Nick, I guess we already chatted about this. Nick says, I think it depends on the type of recruiter. There are too many who claim to be well connected to the client who actually are completely unknown to them, and they're just looking for a good resume that will help get them through the door. Yeah, so myself and Nick already chatted about that one when Nick called in. But yeah, folks, this is why you have to be asking questions and qualifying the opportunity. So you make sure you're not wasting your own time, right? Because there are situations where recruiters might be, just looking for resumes to build a relationship with a client who's not even their client yet, right? Now, my personal take on this is, if that's the situation, as a recruiter, I was always upfront about that, right? So if I called Nick, for example, and I was like, and I'm trying to get get the attention of some hiring manager, and it's not an established relationship, I might tell Nick, hey, Nick, look, I'm just going to keep it real with you. I do not have an established relationship with this client. However, I do understand that they are currently looking for a software development, whatever, manager or something of that sort. And if you're okay with it, Nick, what I want to do, and again, I don't have an established relationship, I just want to be transparent about that, Nick. But if you're okay with it, I love the opportunity to see if I can get their attention and at least establish communication and see if I can get you in front of them for this position, if you're okay with that, right? So, folks, look, if you're a recruiter, you're just throwing resumes out there and you're not letting the candidate know the real deal. That's not, in my books, that's not ethical. Right. My MO as a recruiter was always to be transparent with candidates. Right. So if it was a situation where it was not an established relationship, I would always tell my candidates that I was reaching out to what the real story is. Right. That, hey, this is not an established relationship. Never worked with this client before. What I do know is they are looking for someone with your skills and your experience. And I think that, they would like your profile because of XYZ on your resume. And if it's okay with you, Mr. or Mrs. Candidate, I'd like to present your resume and see if that could generate some interest from the end client or not. And hey, you know what, folks? Sometimes the candidate might say, no, I don't want to do that, Dean. I don't feel comfortable doing that. And if that's the case, you as a recruiter have to respect that. You got to be okay with that. But the point here is transparency, folks. You got to be transparent with your candidates. And that's how you build that trust and that relationship and make it a long-term relationship with your candidates, right? With whoever the candidates you're trying to reach out to, communicate with, or present to your roles or your clients. All right. So just keep this in mind. So yeah, that was a great point, Nick. Definitely agree with you on that. Nick said, no, don't discuss salary with the recruiter. That's a huge mistake. Yeah. So, I mean, I get where you're coming from, Nick. I think we have differing views in relation to this, but, just from a recruiter standpoint, folks, if you don't at least present a range, especially if we're talking staffing agencies here, chances are they're not going to forward your resume to the hiring team. And I'll tell you why also, just to expand on this, because behind the scenes, the sales team, right? And usually within staffing agencies, there's kind of a division, right? There's the recruiters, then there's the sales or account management team, or in some agencies, it's what's called a 360 position, where the person is doing both recruiting and account management and business development, right? And in most cases, when the recruiter presents, or if the sales team or if the recruiter presents a candidate to a client, the expectation is that an estimated range is mentioned when the recruiter is presenting the profile, right? So this is why I get where you're coming from, Nick, but realistically, folks, if you're dealing with a staffing agency and you don't present at least a range of what you're looking for, they're not going to present your profile to the client. The recruiter's manager is going to disagree with it. They're going to say, no, this is, we can't move ahead with this candidate. And they're going to pull up a whole fuss about that, right? So just to give you a realistic outlook. So again, Nick, appreciate you sharing your thoughts, your comments. We might be in disagreement here, but definitely would love to have you as well on my tech talk. So I'm going to reach out to you at some point this week, Nick, to have you as a guest on my tech talks. But great having you here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Any more questions here? Any more questions? Let's see here. So Arash says, why do recruiters want to see us before presenting us to the client? Yeah, Arash, I mean, mostly this is, there's multiple reasons why, right, Arash? So first of all, they want to see how well you present and communicate, right? How you present as a person, how you are as a person, what's your personality like. And also in addition to that, another aspect is they want to see your level of commitment, right? Because if a recruiter says, yeah, let's set up a video call to chat, or let's set up a face-to-face meeting, maybe pre-COVID, and the candidate refuses to do that, or for whatever reason they avoid, a face-to-face communication, might come across as a bit kind of weird, right? For the recruiter at least. So again, in most cases, Arash, it's simply just to see what you're like, your personality and all that stuff. And that's pretty much it, right? That's the main reason why recruiters want to do that. So hope that answers your question, Arash, but it's a great question. Thanks for asking. Snehal says, hi, Dean. Sometimes multiple recruiters contact you for the same position, and they want candidates confirmation for sole representation while no reciprocation, while no reciprocate with same confirmation. How do you deal with such a situation? All right. So Snehal brings up a great point, right? So he's like, hey, Dean, all right, so how do you deal with a situation where, I got multiple recruiters reaching out to me. It's about the same position. And it's like all they want to do is they want to get my right to represent and then present my resume. And then, there's no communication after that. So unfortunately, Snehal, this does happen, right? And it's something, again, yet another, black mark on our industry, right? When recruiters do this. So my advice to you, Snehal, is take the advice I covered in today's session, right? You have to ask questions. You have to qualify the opportunity, Snehal, right? So don't just because the recruiter calls and says, yeah, so I got this client, they're in the banking sector, you have a great resume, what's your rate? Let me present you. No, slow it down just a bit, Snehal. Ask them questions. How long have you been working with this client? Who is your direct point of contact at the organization? Right? Have you done business with this client in the past? If so, what kind of positions? How frequently do you anticipate working with this client in the future? What are some of the details of the project? Can you tell me more about the project? And also those other questions I covered, right? What caught your attention about my resume? Why do you think my profile would be a good fit for this position based on your understanding of the project from the client? So if they're not able to answer these questions, Snehal, if you're not able to get as much, information as you'd like from this, chances are it might be they're just throwing resumes against the wall. But let's say even if that's not the case, Snehal, what you can do is just go with whatever agency or recruiter you feel is the most credible, right? The most trustworthy, the most credible. And, that's where, you have to kind of judge for yourself, right? But hope that helps, Snehal. Great question there. So Chinmay says, Nick, when recruiters asking to tell your expectations and how to handle that. Yeah. So we kind of covered that, Chinmay. Nick and I have differing views on this. My advice, folks, look, if it's a staffing agency, you don't share your salary range or expectations. Chances are they're not gonna move you ahead. They're not gonna present you for the role. Right? That's just the reality of the situation. So we got Whitney Bell in the house. Whitney, good to have you here. Whitney says, true. Sometimes there's an option for a buyout. Everything is negotiable. Absolutely. Whitney says, I love that above average. Yeah, I guess that's in regards to Nick's comment there in terms of salary range. Yeah, I mean, I know that sounds great, and Whitney, appreciate you tuning in. But folks, look, if you, I mean, you got to be careful with some of these things that you might say, right? I mean, maybe Nick was able to pull that off, but just because Nick was able to pull that off does not mean all of you should be giving responses right like that, right? I mean, if I was speaking to a candidate, I was having a serious discussion about a role, and they're being really vague about what their range is, I might not take the candidate seriously. And the same thing goes if you're dealing with a hiring team, right? If you're not handling the conversation correctly, if you're saying things like, what are you looking for in terms of salary? Well, I'm looking for above average. I mean, okay, whatever. Let me move on to the next candidate that's more willing to have that discussion, right? So just keep these things in mind, folks. All right. So I do appreciate where you're coming from, Nick, and Whitney. Appreciate you tuning in. But hey, just keeping it real with you folks, all right, in terms of what to expect from recruiters. Whitney says that feedback is coming from your end. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about here, Whitney, but thanks for your comment. Arash said, what if you are about to sign a contract and the recruiter says this other company has this position and they ask for a cut on my rate? What should I do? So let me see if I understand this. What if you're about to sign a contract and the recruiter says this other company has this position and they ask for a cut in my rate? What should I do? Yeah, I mean, that's just messed up, Arash. I'm sorry if you have to face that. So this is where you got to make a decision, Arash. If the cut they're asking for makes sense for you or if not. Or maybe you might decide, hey, and you know what, Arash, if you're someone who has options, like you have multiple offers coming your way, you know that you don't have to worry much about, getting interviews and stuff like that. In that case, I would say, hey, you're in a position to just, not move ahead with this at all. Right? Because that's not right. I don't think that's not ethical. It's not right that the recruiter, they confirmed a different rate. They confirmed a different rate, and now they're saying that, yeah, you got to cut your rate. That's not ethical in my books. But that being said, I know we got to be realistic as well, right? I mean, you folks have bills to pay. You got mortgages. You got rents to pay, whatever your situation is. So depending on your situation, Arash, I would say it's up to you. It's up to you. I mean, if you want to stay in there, you really need this role, you need this position, then that's your decision to make. But if you're in a position, Arash, where you can walk away, I'd say, just walk away, because that's not right. I mean, that's no good reason as to why they should cut your rate, right? So again, this is a very much a subjective, personal situation kind of thing, Arash, and for the rest of you out there wondering, all right? So thanks for this. Thanks for sharing that, Arash. Hope that helps. And look, you got to make your decision, right? It depends on your situation. Sharik says, spot on with regards to interviewing agencies when they are interviewing you. Yeah, absolutely, Sharik, right? The interview goes both ways, folks. There's no reason why you as a job seeker, as a candidate, should not ask your own questions. So keep that in mind. And Chinmay says, yes, agreed. All right. Thanks for confirming that, Chinmay. So folks, it looks like that's it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope everyone got some great, knowledge from today's session. Appreciate everyone tuning in. And by the way, if you want to download a free sample script on how to run recruiters through your resume, I have a free sample script. It's a free PDF on my website where I break down how you should be running recruiters through your resume. And you can grab that on my website. It's www.dkglobaltalent.com. So make sure you check it out again, www.dkglobaltalent.com. It's a free PDF you can grab a hold of. If you want weekly job search tips, you can subscribe to my newsletter, folks. I have a free newsletter, free job search strategies newsletter released every Monday at 7:30 a.m. So you're off to a good start in your job search. And I also keep you updated on upcoming live streams and stuff like that. So you can subscribe to my newsletter again on my website, www.dkglobaltalent.com. Make sure you check that out. And finally, just wanted to give a quick announcement on something I've been working on very hard for the past couple of months. I'm releasing soon a new video program on how to apply for jobs online the right way. Right now, I recently did this survey on LinkedIn itself, and 429 of you voted on this survey, right? It was actually not a survey, but a poll. And 76% of you said the number one challenge you're facing in your job search is you're applying to positions and you're not getting a response. 76%, folks, all right? So that just blew my mind. And I've been conducting this same poll over and over again since the advent of the pandemic. and it's consistently been in like the 70% plus response range for that being the number one challenge. So what I've done, folks, is I've created a program. It's a pre-recorded program. It's a video program, well, video and text, where I'm teaching you how to increase your responses when you're applying to jobs online. This is based on my experiences as a job seeker. It's based on strategies agencies use to get in touch with hiring teams. You don't need to do any cold calling or anything like that, but I'm going to be teaching you the 3-step process. I've been teaching to people over the past couple of years. I teach to my one-on-one coaching clients that gets them responses from hiring teams. So I've made it into a pre-recorded program. It's going to be very affordable. I know not everyone can afford my one-on-one coaching. So I wanted to make this available for as much people as possible. So look, if you want to stay updated on this, subscribe to my email list. I'll probably be releasing this program in about 1 to 2 weeks from now. But I'm really excited about it because I know it's going to help a lot of people and increase their responses to their job applications. All right. So again, it's a program. It's going to show you my 3-step process in how to increase responses from hiring teams when you're applying to jobs online. All right. If you're only applying to jobs online, you're submitting your application, you're submitting your resume and waiting for a response. You're probably part of that 76% that voted on my poll that are not receiving responses. You can depend on just applying online, submitting your resume, folks, and just waiting for a response. I'm going to be teaching you a more proactive way of generating conversations with hiring teams so you can actually increase your chances of getting interviews. All right. So make sure you sign up for my newsletter if you want to get notified about that, or I'll be letting you folks know about that as we get closer to the release date. All right. So really excited about that, and hope everyone has a fantastic week ahead. And make sure you like, share, and comment this session, folks, if you found the session helpful. And hope everyone most importantly, you apply what you learned in this session. That is the most important part, folks. You have to apply what you've learned, right? When you apply what you've learned, that's how you're going to put yourself in a position to get yourself the results that you want. All right. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. And feel free to share any more comments or questions you have, and or any topics you want me to cover in the next live stream. All right. We got some more comments here. Arash says, thanks a lot. Much appreciated. No worries, Arash. Snehal said, thanks, Dean. No worries, Snehal. Chinmay says, thank you, Dean. No worries, Chinmay. And Maharshi says, yes, very well explained, Dean. Thanks you for this session and insights. No worries, Maharshi. Thanks so much for tuning in. And everyone have a fantastic week, all right? See you all tomorrow. Remember, tomorrow, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. If you have an interest in the AML industry, the anti-money laundering industry, I have an expert in this space coming in to talk about how to build your career in this space, what career opportunities exist in the AML space. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone, my guest is Sanjay Duggal. He's going to be my guest, and I'm going to be asking him about that, all that stuff, all right? So again, same time tomorrow. For those of you folks interested, I'll see you then, all right? Everyone have a fantastic week. Keep pushing through, folks, all right? I'm here to help you out.